Bonjour, hi. This is
Hi,
Marie-Claude, or MC. I'm in the studio with Mike Lanza. Thanks for being here, Mike.
great to be here.
Your book changed our lives. I'm so grateful I discovered it. My brother, who's a physical education teacher, talked to me about it. We loved it immediately. And at the time we read it, we were in Montreal. We had no kids. And when we had our first son, Marco, we decided to move out of the city. And then, based on your ideas, we chose a place where there was a vibrant community. You put great emphasis on the importance of choosing a place to live where the neighborhood is more important than the beauty of the home. And I was very curious to know how you came up yourself with that conclusion for your family.
Sure. I should start by saying my first child's name is Marco as well. And when my wife was pregnant with Marco, I started asking other people I know. I was old to have my first child, so I had a lot of friends who had kids. Just kind of was curious about what their kids' lives were like. I hadn't really thought about kids very much, being a single person in San Francisco, and I was really, I was appalled. Frankly, I found out that kids. Well, a lot of people said, "Well, kids don't play outside anymore. Kids don't play independently. They have play dates. They have lots of activities. They get driven around. Um, they're on their screens a lot." At the time, Marco's 19, so they were playing video games on their televisions, and there were no iPhones yet, but not very different from today. And I just thought to myself, I can't raise my kid this way. I guess one of the things I'm, is fortunate about me is that I'm a software entrepreneur, and I just naturally just think of how I can change things, how I can make things different, rather than just going with whatever culture is around me. So I just said, I'm not raising my kid this way. No way. Um, but it turned out to be a lot harder than I thought.
Yeah, it's the same for us. We moved out of Montreal for the same reason. We grew up initially in the suburbs. We played outside all the time, and we kind of realized that we wanted more nature and more kids for our son. I just forgot to mention that you can hear by my voice that I have a maybe French Canadian accent, but also I'm recovering from a cold. So sorry in advance if my it's harder to hear me. But yeah, we grew up in Montreal. We grew up in Laval, and then we moved to Montreal for our studies, and we decided to envision something different for our son. It's the same as you, and then it became super hard because of the human aspect of it. It's I realize it's hard to create a community. And I was wondering, since your book was written 12 years ago, what feedback do you get from parents? Because it seems like people have less and less kids now. So the
Yeah, yeah,
complexity of creating a neighborhood is even harder. Do you have feedback on that?
yeah. Well, I want to take a step back from that question to frame it a little broader and say, um, I very much believe in human freedom, the right of people to do what they would want to do. Um, but when it comes to my kids' lives, there's to use an economics expression, there's an externality problem. Um, Normally in life, I'm fine with my neighbors doing what they do as long as it doesn't directly hurt me. Um, but with my kids, if all of my neighbors are living that, you know, in the culture of childhood today, which is where kids are driven around to activities, kids don't go outside, kids are on screens, that actually hurts my child. um, in order for my child to have a good life, somehow I need to figure out how to get other parents or live in a place where other parents agree with me, the kids should be outside, should be free, should not be supervised very much. So that was a big step for me, was to think, oh, I need to somehow make this happen or coax it to happen for other people and somehow influence them. My first thought was, well, maybe I'll just buy a house in a great neighborhood where there's lots of kids playing. And I looked and looked and looked and drove like crazy, and I couldn't find one. I couldn't find a house available in a neighborhood where there were lots of kids playing. The best I could do was find a house in a neighborhood where there were a lot of, a lot of things about the neighborhood that would enable children's outdoor play and free play, and where there were a lot of kids. So there's had sort of what we say the bones were there, but not the actual activity. Yeah, not the actual activity, because the actual activity I couldn't find anywhere. I forget your exact question, but I just want to sort of give it that background that that I wanted to find a place that had the potential to be a Playborhood, what I later called a Playborhood, but it wasn't exactly happening. And then I wanted to figure out not how to force people, but how to maybe influence the culture of the neighborhood, make it different, make it into a place that was like, frankly, where I grew up 40 years ago. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the suburbs.
Yeah, one of the question was, do you feel that it's getting worse and worse finding a neighborhood with kids, actually, since people have less and less kids? Is it feedback you get from parents?
Well, there's less and less kids, and just frankly, the culture of the children's culture that de-emphasizes independent play is becoming stronger and stronger. Kids are more and more on screens. They're looking at their phones and iPads. Now we have sports, organized sports are so organized, and the leagues are, have been around for very long, and they have lots of people working there. And anytime you have institutions that have been around a long time, they want to perpetuate themselves. So people find it amazing, incredible, unbelievable that the kids would want to actually get together and play a pickup game of basketball or soccer or baseball. It's very difficult to make it happen these days because our culture is so entrenched that is antagonistic to free play.
It's interesting how we act like this, because we have this memory of being a child playing freely outside, and we want to recreate that for our child. But I might be the last generation, one of the last that I was not born with phones. Like the computer arrived in our home, the video games arrived in our home. But then the kids, they're born with all of this. So if they don't even have the memory of it, they won't be able to recreate it. So I feel this sense of urgency that time is running out. And I see it in your book. You were so worried about the negative impacts.
There's another book. So I wrote this book called Playborhood. There's another book that's more popular called Free Range Kids by Lenore Skenazy. And I read that early on, and I read her blog, and I think she makes a lot of good points. But one fundamental difference I have with that philosophy is she says, just let them go. Let the kids play outside. The problem is, this network effect that I talked about before. If you just say, kids, go outside, you can't watch television, or you can't play with your screens, there's nothing going on. It's boring. It's horrible. And, so somehow we need to sort of band together, come together, and create a new culture. And that's really hard. And so that's what the book is about, is kind of creating a new culture and making something that's sustainable over time.
And for your family, what choices did you make at the time? So you chose a neighborhood that had certain criterias that met
Right.
certain of your criterias, and
So
then
we bought a house. We bought a house, and I'm looking around. I'm not in love with the house itself. What I'm in love with is what we've done with it, what we've done with the yard. So every square foot or every square meter, let's say, if you're in Canada, of our yard is optimized for human interaction and children's free play. That's what the yard is about. It's not about nice looking shrubs. It's not about what it looks like from the street. It's not about anything but utilizing every square meter for fun for children. And frankly, attracting other children who live in the neighborhood to want to play in our yard with our kids, or a lot of times when we're not even around. We want kids to play here all the time. And it's become kind of an oasis in our neighborhood for play. So that was sort of the driving force behind creating the physical environment we have. And then the other part is, when my kids were little, I'm actually I'm kind of a shy guy, but I was kind of pushy. I wanted to be outside with my kids in the front yard, because the front yard is not fenced in, with my kids, facilitating their play and making an attractive place where other families would feel welcome to come over and play as well. And did that over a period of years. Did a bunch of little gimmicks, fun things, and now we're in a new phase where my kids are teenagers and they're very independent, and we have a lot of kids coming over on their own. So it's sort of we set things in motion. Actually, we created a culture that is very free and open and facilitates kids playing on their own.
it's nice that it's long lasting. Like
Yeah, it is.
I had some questions about your kids now that they are grown up. But if you go back at the time of when they were young, can you do a tour of your home and yards for people?
Sure. Well, it's not the most important thing, but if you see behind me, there's a huge map. I'm very interested in maps. We have huge maps throughout the house, and one of the things that is important to me is that my kids know where they are and that they can navigate the world. So we have world map, we have United States map, we have San Francisco Bay Area map where we're from, and we go all the way down to the specific neighborhood where we are, and so our kids have this real sense of where they are. The outside is we really didn't spend a lot of money. We spent almost no money on furniture inside our house, but we spent a lot of money, a lot of time in our yard trying to make our yard into a fun place. In the backyard, we've got a huge 2-story playhouse. It's next to an in-ground trampoline. In-ground meaning it's not above ground, it's at the ground level. I attached rock climbing holds all over the playhouse, and kids can climb up and jump from there onto the trampoline. It's going to scare people. You can jump from 12 feet down to a trampoline. It's a lot of fun. I can honestly say, let's see, I'm trying to think in 15, 16 years, I think maybe one kid got stitches once. I mean, there are kids here all the time. Kids take a lot of chances, but they learn to take risks, which I think is great. And it's a metaphor for life, learning how to take risks in your life. You learn to take risks when you're playing. I think that's important. We also have a zip line in our backyard, and this is not a big backyard. This is, let's say in meters, it's maybe 10 meters wide and 15 meters deep, something like that. It's not that big. We have huge bean bags, so that's a big part of it. So jumping from different places, jumping to the trampoline, we've got these huge places to land and land softly. By the way, I'll just say about the in-ground trampoline, there's nothing for play that is better. Kids love jumping. And a ground level trampoline, in-ground trampoline, is much safer and is much more social. So very common for kids to sit around on these huge beanbags around the trampoline, jump on the trampoline, and then to one gets off, another comes on, then they wrestle on the trampoline, and then they can run on the grass and jump on the trampoline. So it's just a wonderful social place for kids to come and hang out. In our front yard, we have, for one thing, a huge mural on our driveway of our neighborhood. So it's a map again, and the map is something that little kids can walk around and navigate. And so this is really where maybe you can understand my obsession with maps, not just my obsession in my career and my life, but for kids is the kids are actually looking at the streets where we live, and I drew out all of the lot lines on all the streets in our neighborhood, and they can look at this kid's house and that kid's house and that person's house, and then they can put Legos. So I made the lots the right size for a base plate for Legos, and they can make Lego houses and put them. And we've done a lot of fun stuff with that mural on our driveway. I'll just say our driveway when we moved into our house was stones. And people think when they buy a house, oh, it's so luxurious, we have a stone driveway. I thought, this is horrible, because I want my kids to use the driveway. Think about what kids do with a driveway normally. They ride their bikes, they play basketball, they roll scooters and skateboards. None of that is possible on a stone driveway. So I had all that torn out. So I destroyed all this value that was in the front of my house and put a nice, very smooth driveway and painted a mural on it. And it's become a real focal point for our neighborhood. We also have a lot of other artwork in our front yard. We have 2 mosaics that I had an artist come and help us build. We built them with the artist, and they really have deep history of our family embedded in them. And so they're like monuments to our family and to our life here. For instance, one of the mosaics, we planned for months for this mosaic artist to come and work with us to make it. It is based on a book, a children's book called The Big Orange Splot, which is a very fun children's book. I won't tell the story, but The Big Orange Splot, great book. Anyway, I could say more, but I'll just say that I planned it for months. It so happened that my wife, who was pregnant, had our son early, a month early, on the day that we installed that mosaic. And I came back from the hospital, participated with the artist and with our neighbors, and we have things written in this mosaic about the day that Leo was born. So Leonardo, we call him Leo, he was born on June 16, 2009, and there's something that is about the day he was born right in the front of our house, this beautiful artwork. So that's wonderful. We also have a huge picnic table in our front yard. So most people have picnic tables in their backyard. We put our picnic table in our front yard because when we eat outside in the summer, we want to see neighbors walking by. And very often what still happens is when we're eating outside, other families will walk by and we'll talk to them and we'll say hello, and maybe they'll sit down and join us, or maybe the kids will start playing. It's a much more social, much more fun thing than having our family outdoor dining in the backyard, we think.
It's still there?
It's still there. It's still there. Yeah.
Wow.
We got a huge umbrella in front of it. And, it's funny, in great cities like Montreal, like San Francisco, where I lived, people love sitting on a big avenue, sitting outside the restaurant and seeing the cars go by. But they always usually want to sit in their backyard, fenced in, when they're home. We like sitting in front. We like seeing the neighbors. And one thing I loved about our neighborhood, even though there weren't many kids playing outside, it is very walkable. There are a lot of people walking dogs, walking their children in the evenings. And if you sit outside when you're eating dinner, you get a chance to see them and talk to them. It's been great for us. We also have, next to the picnic table, we have a huge whiteboard running up and down one fence line. I put that in, and so kids can just draw on the whiteboard. We used to have, I'll just say, let's see, we have some skateboard ramps because kids love skateboards. Older kids do. We have a basketball hoop. And we used to have a play river. So it's a series of fiberglass like tubs, if you will, and one flows to another one, flows to the other one, and then water's pumped all the way back to the top. And that's just, that's crazy fun for little kids. Making little boats, building up with rocks, islands, things like that. We don't have that anymore because it takes a lot to maintain. And as our kids got older, they didn't want to play with it anymore. But it was, number two, next to our trampoline, the most important kid draw. One other thing we had in our front yard, which I think is in the book, but we took out, is a sandbox. So again, most people have a sandbox in their backyard. We had it in our front yard, and we actually encouraged families to come over and play in our sandbox, whether we were home or not. And one thing that I would do that was quite fun for kids in the neighborhood was I went and you could buy foreign coins by the kilo, worthless coins that, from devalued currencies. And I would just bury the coins in our sandbox. So it was a treasure hunt for kids. Very fun. So we did a lot of things, and I use the past tense there. We'll talk about today, which is somewhat different. Still very active, still very fun, but we did a lot of things to really try to draw people to our yard because we knew that we needed to change. We wanted to change the culture, and we did.
Well, one of my first thoughts, because you live in a wealthy neighborhood, some people might not know it. And I was curious to know what were the reactions of the neighbors, because in some cities, it's even illegal. It's still illegal to have a garden in your front yard. Yeah. So did it create frictions that you changed everything and that it looked different from the aesthetics of the surroundings?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we did choose a home. One of the most important things we did in choosing our home, again, not the home itself, but the neighborhood, was there are a lot of kids who live around here. And so even if parents have somewhat different attitudes about how they raise their kids, most parents are more open to having a play-friendly yard than, say, older people. And so this is not a neighborhood of older people. It's definitely, it was a neighborhood with lots and lots of young kids. But still, yeah, we stick out. We, a big picnic table right next to the street, this big mural in our driveway. That's really out there. And I would say, well, first of all, I'm the kind of person, I don't mind being different. I mean, I don't have big holes in my ears. I don't have tattoos, but when I believe in something, I have no problem sticking out. And I think that most people were interested, intrigued. We had some people who wanted to come here all the time. I called them groupies. We had people who wanted to bring their kids to our yard because it was the coolest place. That was on one end of, if you have a bell curve of different responses. In the middle, you've got the parents who have kids, and they're going to continue to, they're going to take their kids to the, all the different activities, but they might stop by once in a while. They like us, but they're not going to change very much. They're going to kind of dabble. They're going to sample what we do and have their kids come once a month or so. And then the other side, we had for instance, an elderly couple across the street, very nice people. I had very nice conversations with them, but they got upset at me when I let my kids ride their bike in the street. It's not a busy street. I was teaching my kids, and I thought that, because it's not a busy street, that people who live on the street would be courteous to my kids. But this woman was so upset because I was endangering my children by letting them play in the street. And for the few people who were like that, I would try to talk to them, but she was trying to get me to not allow my kids to play in the street, and I'm sorry. Just one little anecdote I'll say about that. So you're MC, you're in outskirts of Montreal in Quebec. Hockey is very big there. We live in California. Hockey's not real big here, but we like to play street hockey. And one of the things I did for some time was I got 2 big street hockey nets, and we would play in our street. And part of it was just fun. But another part of it was we are claiming our street for our kids to play in the street. And when cars would come, when I was playing with my kids, they learned to play on their own. But I have fond memories of, I see a car driving up, and the normal reaction is, oh, I have to run really fast and move the nets. I would walk nice and slow to the net, and I would, move it, and I would say hello to the person. I just wanted to make them understand that this street is not just your street. It's not just for cars. It's for kids to play, and this is what we do here. If you really don't want to deal with kids playing street hockey in the street, please take another road when you want to drive through our neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Don't come down this road, because this is a place for play. And that's actually, I think it's on the cover of Playborhood, but we also have, and I sell these barricades, these little A-shaped, I don't know what you call them.
Signs?
Signs, yeah, signs. Playborhood signs. And it says, Playborhood, this neighborhood is a place for play. And that became kind of a saying that a lot of people really liked. And what we're trying to tell people is, the street is not just for cars, it's for kids too. And kids start to buy in, and kids start to play on their own in the street. And you don't see that very often these days, at least here in Northern California. Mm.
Well, I was lucky that our street was quiet, but we did exactly the same. Like we played hockey outside, and the boys more than me. But when a car would come, we would take it slowly on the side, like watching the car owner, the driver. We felt like we belonged. It was our street. It was ours. Like we knew every cracks. We knew which crack to use to do the dodgeball limits of the playing field. Good memories. It's nice that you could offer that to your kids. And what I liked in your kind of approach and philosophy is you try to involve your kids also and encourage them to take ownership and to create in that space. Do you have examples of? I know the example of the little home you have, that they could write on the walls, the playhouse.
Yes.
They can write on the walls, and it was kind of annoying at first, but then you realize the value of it.
Yeah, so I'll tell that story, and then maybe I'll think of others. But we have this very large playhouse in our backyard. And it's 2 stories, and on the first story, we installed whiteboard for all the walls, and I put out pens, dry erase pens, and kids drew all over the whiteboards, and it's very fun. But then I noticed upstairs where we had drywall and nice painted walls, kids were drawing all over that, and I got really frustrated at first, because you think as a parent, well, I created this way, and this is what I want kids to do. And for a little bit of time, I was telling my kids, telling their friends, hey, draw on the whiteboard. That's what it's there for. But then I started to look at what they were drawing, and it was some really cool stuff. And there were actually some permanent markers there too, stuff that we couldn't get out. There was a bunch of wood up in the second floor as well. And kids were, drawing messages that they wanted to give each other for the future, something about, I like this kid, or one kid wrote an enemies list, which I thought was kind of fun. They I love you forever, all these sorts of messages for their lives. And I realized, wow, this is really meaningful to them. This is not just something temporary that you can wipe off like dry erase marker. They want this to last. And they were making their claim on this place. It wasn't just my place. It wasn't just my laboratory for trying to understand how to make a better place for play for kids. No, this was something they were staking a claim to, and I was very touched by that. Also, I got my kids to participate in the Playborhood movement, getting them to sort of tell people that they should play outside, play in the neighborhood, play in our yard. This gets into the future a little bit, but we told kids that they could come over and they could come in our backyard, which is a big deal. They could go through our fence to our backyard anytime they wanted. And some kids sometimes will do bad things. No one did anything really bad, but my kids started to take responsibility and make it a help govern the place, help keep it clean, clean up, and sometimes police kids who were doing bad things. So that's, I guess, the next chapter again. That's what I'm living today. But they really got involved. It wasn't just something that they were just passively taking. They were actually got very involved in making our neighborhood into a really fun place for free play for kids.
Your book starts with a manifesto of what you want to create and what you want for your kids. Is it something you wrote for the book, or it's a tool you had at the time and that you read and you with your kids and you told the boys about it?
I actually wrote it when I started the Playborhood blog, playborhood.com, before I published the book, before I even thought about writing the book. It was very fundamental to me. Basically, it says, I had a free life of free play. I think this is what childhood should be like, and that's what I'm going to give for my kids. That's what I'm going to give to my kids. It was good to write it down because it made very clear, very simply, this is so important to me. This is the way I'm going to raise my kids, and I am not going to give in to the culture of parenting and childhood these days. I'm going to make a difference for my kids.
And what were your boys saying about your initiative? Like when they were young, did they feel weird? Did they feel different? Were they enthusiastic? What were their reactions?
There was a part of it was, there wasn't, they had some reaction that was a bit embarrassed. For the most part, they felt good because, first of all, they had a lot of fun. They had an awful lot of fun in our yard. And we were, as a family, a bit of a celebrity family, and mostly positive, not negative. We had, like I said, we had these groupies. We had people coming to our house, not always our next door neighbors. Sometimes people from a block away, 2 blocks away. We had people from a couple miles away. They would take their kids over to our house. They just wanted to. They were excited about the idea of free play, and they wanted to be a part of it. So there was kind of a buzz about our family and our yard, and frankly, it continues to today. If everybody was like us, we wouldn't be so special. But we are kind of we still kind of stick out. We're still kind of a destination for a lot of people. We get tourists come here, tourists from other states, sometimes from other countries. They want to check out our yard. They want to be a part of it.
They announce themselves?
Yeah, they usually want to talk to me. And I'm very open. I like talking to people about it. I give people tours. If you were here, MC, I would walk you around and show you for sure. It's not that I think that we're the best thing, the best yard. I found other places that are amazing that I wrote about in the book. But I want to be very vocal. I want people to understand the thought process behind what we do here, and it's been fun for our kids for the most part.
Do you have do you know other families close to your home that replicated what you did?
Hey, mini pause, si cet épisode t'inspire, tu peux inspirer quelqu'un d'autre en retour, tu peux avoir un impact positif sur la vie de quelqu'un d'autre. Tout ce que tu as à faire, c'est de laisser un review pour le podcast de Vivace. Dès maintenant, tu peux prendre ton téléphone, ouvrir ton application d'écoute et laisser un commentaire. Pas besoin de te casser la tête, écris une chose que tu as aimé de la discussion. C'est ce qui nous permet de faire rayonner tes idées et c'est ce qui te permet d'aider quelqu'un en retour.
This is a bit of a negative. I think we kind of, as we say in English, we suck the oxygen out of the room. So we have such a cool yard that right here in our immediate neighborhood, no one really tried to do much because everybody wanted to come here. But there are a lot of examples of neighborhoods that are not within walking distance. I wrote about one of them in the book Playborhood. They did a play street, and they did a neighborhood summer camp. This is called Camp Iris Way. They did a way better job than I did. I had a neighborhood summer camp. Actually, our neighborhood summer camp was very cool too, but they did it on a large scale. Their street is we call it a horseshoe. So you drive in, and say you drive in, and then you have to turn right, and then you have to turn right again, and so there's no way to go through the area. Well, that area, the horseshoe street, they had like 95% participation of all the kids in the neighborhood in their summer camp for 1 week every year for many years. Totally awesome. And the activities they had, it really actually changed the culture of the neighborhood. And for those of you who are interested in property values and money, it actually raised the property values of the homes in the neighborhood. It became an attribute of when homes would come up for sale in that neighborhood. They would advertise that as, hey, this is where Camp Iris Way is, and they would sell for more. The real estate agents knew that this was a selling point for homes in that neighborhood. So that's just one example. There are a lot of other examples. And MC, you said you've done some things. I don't know how much you want to talk about that in this podcast, but I'd love to know what things you've done.
Well, when we started our journey, we had no kid, and we were in Montreal, and we decided to optimize our apartment. We lived on the second floor, and our apartment was our playground. I wanted to put monkey bars and climbing gear inside, but the apartment was too old and the walls would just crumble. But we started living underground and having a stand-up desk when working, but we also had playful things. Like we played darts inside. We put a huge wood board. We had Olympic rings inside, and the proof of concept was when we had kids at the home, like our nephew, he would start to play right away. Like we didn't have a normal couch, we had a play couch, and he would just use the space for himself and move things around and play basketball inside. And it was just very playful. But then we reached that limit because we realized that our view also is outdoor living and outdoor play. So suddenly our apartment felt, it was big enough, but we wanted more outdoor space that we could change based on our values. And sometimes in the city, we had a back street. There's a huge movement in Montreal of using the back street to create Playborhoods. So that was on my radar. But I felt like I needed more nature. I wanted Marco to run naked outside, just jumping in the grass. And so we found a tiny home that is tinier than our previous apartment, but we had more outdoor space. The thing is, and I know it's a problem with a lot of people, is we have more nature, but we don't have neighbors like in the suburbs. So we don't know our next chapter. Is it going to be going back to the suburban life to have this network effect, that like just playing outside in the street? Or are we going to change the model and find a way to attract families to our backyard and just play outside and make fires and stuff? So we haven't chosen what's going to be the next chapter yet, but I'm thinking of a few scenarios.
Interesting. Yeah. I would say where we live now, one of the great things about it is as I said before, all the foot traffic, all the people walking through the neighborhood, walking dogs, walking children, and if you have that, then you just need to sort of get them to stop and talk, and if they have kids with them, the kids are just going to start playing around. They're going to see all the fun things to do. But if you don't have people walking around in your neighborhood, if it's more rural, if people are driving rather than walking, that's a big hurdle.
Yeah, that's a different ball game. And we chose not to go back to the suburbs where we grew up. At the time, I thought the suburbs were the worst of both worlds. Like not enough nature and not enough like culture and stuff. But looking back at it now, I see the advantages of living in the city, in the suburbs, or on the countryside. Like there are advantages and difficulties anywhere you go. And I think that the community aspect of it, talking to a lot of parents of young children right now, is the hardest. I think the community we live in, they're kind of hippies. They're hippies. Like there's an alternative school in the village that attracts a lot of young families with similar values, which is great. Everybody wants to create more deep human connections, yet it seems very hard to bring this organically because our lifestyles are so different. It's hard to it's a puzzle, and it seems like the pieces don't fit. And you mentioned it. We cannot just say to kids, go play outside. We need to spark life. So I was curious to know what concrete actions you undertook to create this magic where it kind of grows organically after that.
Well, one thing we did, I guess the number one thing was make our front yard attractive, make it very playful, and to be in our front yard on a regular basis. So a lot of parents don't want their kids playing in their front yard because they're afraid the kids will run out into the street. And what I try to do was, can't always be with the kids, but, maybe go out there with the kids, try to give them a little more freedom and try to have them learn how to become independent, push the limits to the point where I can go inside, or my wife can go inside, and they're out there and they're in the sandbox in the front yard. That's more attractive to other kids. That's more attractive to families walking by than if they're in the backyard where no one can see them. When they start riding bikes, they should ride on the street. And that's scary, again, but that's where people see them. That's where they can actually get to know other people. Also, walking our neighborhood, just like other people, I talked about walking our neighborhood. So if we have a grocery store that's probably half a kilometer from our house, we're fortunate. We're a lot of people, you're in the rural area, you might not have a grocery store so close by. Try to make a habit of walking to the grocery store. It takes an extra 10 minutes to walk there, but on the way, you see people you stop, you say hello. Our kids get to know their kids. We get to know each other. It becomes kind of one cohesive village rather than just this place that we start at and jump in a car and drive away from. And our kids start to, become comfortable going to houses down the street because they know those people and they feel very comfortable there, and the adults know them. It's all sort of a gradual process of becoming comfortable in our neighborhood. But it takes an investment, and really it takes a commitment to say, I'm just going to, I'm going to spend time here. I'm going to get my kids to be comfortable here. One little thing to think about, I think, is interesting. When you live in a neighborhood, the neighborhood has a set of people, and there's a certain amount of danger in the neighborhood. It's hopefully I hope it's very low, but there's some amount of danger in the neighborhood. If you go and you walk the neighborhood and you get to know the neighbors and you talk to the adults, and your kids get to know the kids and the kids get to know the adults, nothing about the neighborhood has changed. It's exactly the same, but your perception of it is that it's safer. Just by the very act of getting to know the people there and your kids getting to know the place, getting to know the physical facilities, the physical place, and also the other people, your perception is that this is a safer place to be. That's very, very simple, but it's not something that most people do. Most people think, why would I want to spend that extra 10 minutes to walk to the grocery store? Why would I want to spend the extra time every day I didn't talk about school, but my kids literally never, and we live in a nice warm climate. We have rain, but we don't have snow. They never rode in a car to go to school, ever. We rode bikes to and from school every day. I justify it because I get this really special time with my kids, because I did it with them. My kids started doing it on their own when they were in like 5th grade. But I justify it because I have special time with them, and it's a little exercise for me. It's fun. And I would say that's something that has definitely gotten better over time in our neighborhood, maybe partially through stuff that we've done and trying to really promote bike riding to school. But our neighborhood elementary school, I would say well over half, 50, 60, 70% of kids on a nice day walk or ride their bike to school. They don't get driven to school. It breaks my heart to see, and you still see it. A line half a kilometer long of cars waiting to drop their kids off. It's like they're wasting their time. They're wasting their kids' time. They're polluting the environment. It's horrible. It's so much more fun to ride to school, and it connects kids to their neighborhood and to their neighbors so much better.
Yeah, we live on the street where my dad grew up, and I went to the elementary school where he went, and I walked the same streets, and every time I pass by certain points, I remember things from my childhood. So it creates memories also, to be close to the ground and to interact with nature and to see your environment evolve. And it's so different from the experience from a car. Yeah, I'm also saddened by the statistics of kids not walking to school. one example you give in the book about the network effect is the fact that kids are gonna follow the cool kids. And it's important to kind of recruit the cool kids and bring them outside. Did you have like a master plan on how to do this?
Well, I need to be careful. I need to be careful and not be too pushy. Not say, "Oh, you're a cool kid. You have to hang out in your yard."
Yeah.
I think, but it's true. It is definitely true. Kids look at each other. They look to see what's cool, what's fun, what's not cool, and I would not say that my kids are the coolest kids, the most popular kids. But I would say that the play dates in our yard with our kids, that was a prize.
Okay.
The kids would ask their parents, "Can you talk to Mr. Lanza? Can you, and I would say yes, and I would say, I sometimes I would be kind of frustrating for the kid. I would say, well, why don't you just ask Marco, my son Marco? Why don't you just ask him? I was trying to get the kids to negotiate it rather than the kids' natural instinct is to have the parents discuss it. Anyway, even though my kids were not the most popular, a play date with my kids in our yard was the cool thing to do for kids after school, and that was a great dynamic to have.
Were there times where a new video games came or a new cool thing, and then that the kids started playing less outside? Like, have you seen kind of
Sure.
waves?
So we have organized sports. So we have baseball and soccer are the main ones for young kids. And when baseball and soccer start those seasons, we see traffic go down, and that's just it's unfortunate. You can't totally combat that. One thing that we did try to do, and we have been successful at, is just helping kids learn how to run their own pickup games. Because when I was a kid, that was our culture. We would go out every day and we would play pickup softball, pickup football, pickup street hockey, and so our kids. Basketball was the big one in our street and in front of our yard. We do get kids playing basketball. There's a whole culture, learning the rules, learning how to officiate, how to be their own referees, how to have an argument and figure out which rule are we going to abide by, and we're going to make up and we're going to get along with each other. Those are really important things, and I think that we combated to some extent the influence of organized sports, but we didn't beat it. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's powerful, and when it's what people know, they go back to that. We have to. In a free play setting, I'm just going to mention, we created adventure playgrounds in the village. So we did 3 already. So we
That's
just
great.
bring loose parts and kids can play. And the intent was not to say that seasonal events would change everything, would change the culture, but we just had to illustrate what free play is. We had to tell people, if you put junk, like tires and cardboard boxes, magic is going to happen. The kids are going to start to play with all of this, but it's a culture we need to illustrate and explain a lot, because kids are used to being told what to do, and they expect directions and rules. I'm curious. So you try to encourage your child to be self-reliant and to solve their own conflicts. Were there times where the conflicts between the kids would be kind of too big and the parents need to sit down and
Oh,
talk it
sure.
through?
I'll bring up my son Marco again. Marco would hit other kids. I mean, he wasn't a violent kid, but he didn't take into account the feelings of other kids sometimes, and I would need to step in. What I would try to do is I would try to pull him aside, talk to him, and sort of prepare him for his interactions rather than stand there. I think you have to, you sort of have to, I hate to put it so starkly, but you have to kind of live on the edge with kids and give them, the opportunity to push their own limits, to go beyond what they're capable of. So I would always try to give them more freedom than I think other parents would give their kids, because that's how you learn. You learn through making mistakes. Also, about risk. So I talked about I'm pointing outside right now. We have this huge playhouse with these rock climbing holes. It's 12 feet high, and we got a trampoline next to it. Oh my gosh, parents go crazy when they see that. We also have our attic is really fun, and we have a skylight, so you can open the skylight and go on the roof of our house. It's 30 feet high or 35 feet high, and kids do that. What I found is that if it's part of kids' lives, if they're used to playing on the trampoline and climbing on the playhouse, if it's not something they do just once a year, if they do it once a year, then they go crazy. If it's something that's part of their life, part of their culture, the zip line, they actually manage their own risk. They actually learn how to take risks. They become good at it. I'd like to think that this is something they can carry on in their lives, whether it's physical or it's, trying to get a promotion at work, or trying to start a new company or something like that. I hope it carries on to other things that they do. But I really, really don't want to. I always try to deflect and try to get my kids to manage their conflicts rather than have myself jumping in and being the heavy-handed parent.
It's funny. Marco is also, he loves rough play. He's very physical. He likes to jump on things. Like when he was a baby, Vince would put him in high places and he would just jump. And over 2.5 years, after 2 years, he's getting comfortable climbing anything and jumping. But he also loves rough play. And the issue is he would hit other kids. He's still at an age where he needs to control his force.
How old is he now?
Marco is 2.5. And he started also making fires with us when he was maybe 1.5, like starting to walk in a stable way. And we posted a video on this on our Instagram, and some parents were going crazy. They thought it was so dangerous, but he never burnt himself. He burnt himself on the classic stove when we were cooking, because he had no input about that artificial surface.
Right.
He didn't feel the heat. He didn't see the flames. He didn't smell the fire. And now, because he's making fire with us all the time, he's bored. Like, he's not fascinated by it or obsessed. He's just, it's there. It's like, it's not special for him, and he doesn't take risk. He knows what it is. So we also hope that encourage him to do risky things slowly and carefully with us would create a human that knows his capabilities and that wants to interact with the world.
Yeah, I have a story that is about my middle son Nico, at about the same age as Marco, your Marco. So our Nico is 3 years and 4 months, little over 3 years younger than our oldest, Marco. And so Marco was a great bike rider. So Nico is 2 years, almost 3 years old. Marco is a great bike rider. He's riding his bike all the time. And Nico looks up to his older brother, and he wants to be like his older brother. And we would let Nico just hang out in our garage. We have all these different little bikes and tricycles, and one day I noticed that Nico, he was 2 years and 10 months old. He got on this balance bike, and he moved, and he picked up his feet. He learned how to ride a bicycle totally on his own. Because he had all these different wheeled vehicles. He had his brother, who was a great bicyclist, and we let him go. We gave him freedom. And, you know, so once I saw him on a balance bike, I put him on a regular bike with pedals, and a couple hours later, he's riding a bike, 2 years and 10 months. And it's just amazing. If you give kids the right environment, if you give them some freedom, if you give them some inspiration, they can figure a lot of things out.
Yeah, we underestimate what kids can do, for sure.
Yeah.
I see kids videos from kids in Asia, a young kid that was maybe 4 or 5 years old, that was cooking for his younger brother that was maybe a year and a half, and you see him cooking a wok over a fire, and he's so I don't know how to describe it, like he's so efficient with his movements and so confident. And I thought, wow, some kids, they cannot even hold a knife when they are 10 years old.
Yeah.
And this small kid, so we need those images to break our view of what kids can and cannot do.
Right.
When I saw your
then,
backyard, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this whole idea that a kid can't do this until they're 8, the kid can't do that until they're 10. It just really bothers me. It's not that every kid can do it at 8, every kid can do it at 10, but if we can create an environment for them where they can work on a skill a little bit at a time and improve and think of for themselves, they'll get there on their own.
Have you heard of the expression, the weird societies?
No.
I think you're going to like him. It's Joseph Henrich. He's he used to work in economy, but also anthropology. I think now he's at Harvard. He realized that over 90% of studies in psychology are based on Western societies. And maybe 75% on grad students, on university students. So he came to realize that what we think is human is actually based on an exception. Like Westerners, we are these exceptions among many cultures. So the weird expression is the acronym for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. Like it's overall expression. And I realized that our view of childhood is weird.
Yeah.
It's just very weird. And once we see it, we cannot unsee it, that we have this, it's cultural, and we need to break that culture because it's not serving our children.
Yeah.
Now that your sons are older, what do they tell you about their experience, childhood experiences?
So they are 19, 16, and 14. The 19-year-old is at college. He's close, so we see him. We just saw him last weekend. A few things. First of all, our yard is not just for us. And so we have kids coming over here pretty much every day. And we really like that. Usually we know them. We don't always know them well. 95% of the time, at least, they're respectful and they're nice. The kids are nice and they add to our lives. They make our lives better. And so our kids, that's a part of their life is the fact that they live in a place where kids are around playing freely and they just join in. My kids just join in, and it's like having a Game Boy or having an iPad sitting around. There's this built-in thing to do that a lot of other kids don't have, which I think is really great. Another thing that is a little bit not exactly relevant to your question, but I think is important, is to what extent is a Playborhood responsible? I think it is responsible to some extent. The fact that we've done this culture in our home is that my three boys get along really, really well. They were part of this shared project of neighborhood play from the moment they were born, and they just naturally play with each other. So they shoot basketball. When my son comes home from college, he shoots basketball with his younger brothers. They horse around with each other. They play video games together. They have a very cooperative, warm relationship with each other. And it's hard to connect the dots. It's hard to say, how did our Playborhood culture contribute to our boys getting along so well? But to me, it all makes sense. It all fits together. And I think a big part of it is that we weren't trying to optimize each kid's life by taking them to all their separate different activities their whole lives. We were in a shared project from the time they were young, and it was about our neighborhood, our community, but also our family, and doing things together and doing things as a unit and promoting that, rather than, this kid is really good at photography, so he's going to go to his photography classes, and this kid is good at this, and he's going to do that. It was about the unit, and the neighborhood is a unit, and the family is a unit, and it's really stuck together very well.
That's beautiful. I'm so happy to hear this, because I expected that more than 10 years later you would tell me that your yards changed, your needs changed, and that everything was different. It's nice to hear that some elements are still there.
Right.
And being they're teens, how do they use the backyard and the front yard when you're not around?
Yeah, so first of all, I am out of the business of going outside with my kids and playing in our front yard. I did that when they were very little. We have dinners in our picnic table in our front yard. Sometimes I'll shoot basketball with them, but they do their own thing. They very often shoot basketball in our street in the front of our house. Just yesterday, some kids were jumping in the trampoline in the backyard, and one of my kids went out there and jumped with them. They played with them. I think the first floor of our playhouse is now a weight room, because my 19-year-old especially, but also my 16-year-old, he wants to lift weights. He wants to get buff. And so the boys hang out. The boys hang out with each other, and they lift weights and they talk, and so it's evolved in that way. But it's definitely still a very vibrant place where people want to be. I would say one of the lasting effects that is not about our yard is that our kids are very independently mobile. So they all ride bikes. They don't ask us for rides hardly at all. Also, initially I was reluctant, but I got into e-bikes, electric bikes for kids. So my oldest, he's in college. He doesn't need an e-bike where he is, but my younger two are still here. They're high school and middle school. They have e-bikes. This is wonderful. They don't ask us to drive them to their soccer practices. They go on their own, 5 miles away. They do it on their own, and they love it. They really enjoy it. And they go to friends' houses. They really they really have a lot of confidence in their ability to go places and do things. And I don't think they would have had that without the kind of upbringing we gave them.
Do they have friends that have that level of freedom and energy? I was kind of curious.
They do, yeah.
Okay.
They do, but also they have friends. This is kind of funny. It's a little tension we have. So they have friends they play soccer with, and the parents are, they're not like us. They feel like they need to drive their kids everywhere, and so often the parents will ask, "Well, do you want to carpool to go to this soccer practice?" And we have a cultural mismatch. I say, "No, my kids ride their bikes. No, sorry." It's like kind of mean that I don't want to participate in this. I mean, it's nice to interact with other parents and do things with other parents and communicate with them, and I'm very happy to do that. But I really want my kids, and I'm selfish. I've got other things I want to do. I don't want to be driving. I just don't think that's a very good life. Driving your kids, a half hour here, a half hour there. All of a sudden, you have no free time at all.
Yeah, I get it. Like I call them the taxi parents.
Yeah.
Like the kids are active maybe at the practices, like in the tournaments, but the parents are sitting in the bleachers or in the car.
and by the way, I go to pretty much all my kids' games.
Yeah.
So the games for me are really important because that's that's what they practice for all week. And so I want to watch them. I want to give them feedback. I want to cheer for them. But the practices, come on, this is just waste my time.
Well, yeah, I get it. I was a softball player, and I don't understand how my parents could spend so much time on my hobby, like just driving me around everywhere. I'm just grateful that they did it because I enjoyed myself. But I wonder, like, I think they enjoyed it as well. But anyway, I was curious to understand, like, the point of view of your sons, because my nephew told me the story of what happened in the schoolyard when the cell phones came in. So a 9-year-old explained to me, and he was devastated. Like he had, like we are talking about like our childhood from the past. At 9-year-old, he talked about like free play in the schoolyard, like it was something from the past. Like he said, he said the words, we were hundreds of kids playing, and then suddenly nobody wants to play anymore. And I asked, how come you can have cell phones at school? And he says, we're not allowed, but we run faster than the teachers checking on us. So the kids just run and they do their things. And he was super proud to tell me that he was one of the last standing, like still playing outside nature with his gang, playing, and he was proud of it. And I thought, yeah, when it's part of the child, and they start promoting those beliefs, so I can imagine how your sons kind of maybe played that role as well.
Well, they, my kids, they're on their phones a lot. They all have phones. They're on their phones a lot. My wife and I think it's too much at times. I hate it when they come home from school and they just sit there and they look at this thing, so we all deal with it. I would say just like yesterday, my youngest son, Leo, was sitting on the couch after school looking at his phone, but one of his friends showed up in our backyard and started jumping on the trampoline. And I guess that's kind of the point of Playborhood. The whole idea, the whole philosophy of Playborhood is if we make free play accessible, reliable meaning it's available, it's there on a regular basis, then sometimes it will beat Instagram. It will beat TikTok. If there's nothing going on in your neighborhood, TikTok wins every time. But yesterday for an hour, jumping on the trampoline beat TikTok and Instagram for Leo. It was worth it for him to get off his butt and get off the couch and go outside and jump on the trampoline for an hour because it was right there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a nice example. I love it. It brings hope. And I was wondering, your book is evergreen. I love that word. I read it. I don't think I knew when it was published. The problems of immobility is still present. Like the suffering of the children is I think even higher, and the solutions are still valuable. But I was wondering, if you were to edit the book, are there things you want to add? You would add based on those years of feedback you got from parents?
That's an interesting question. I think I can't. I hate to be this way. I can't think of anything that I would write differently, but I do have some more observations from 10 years, actually 12 years later now, that I didn't know. First of all, and it's mostly good news. First of all, I wrote about front yards all the time, and I didn't realize that I could actually create a culture in our neighborhood where kids would be okay going through our gate and going to our backyard without ever knocking on our door. We created that reputation, the word spread, and kids do it. And it's great. It's great. It's a lot of fun for them. It's great for my kids. Usually 95% of the time, there's no problem. It has gotten out of hand a little bit at times. And let me say one thing about getting out of hand. Kids go through a difficult stage in their lives. I'd like to think usually they get out of it and they become more mature. But there's adolescence. There was one kid in particular who went to my neighborhood summer camps. Good kid. His name is Finn. And he went through a period in middle school, early high school. He was hiding in our playhouse. I think he was smoking something. He and his friends, got markers or spray paint and made some things that were not nice, kind of lewd things, graffiti. And to the extent that I could, I would try to nicely say to him, "Hey, please don't do that anymore." My kids were tougher. My kids wanted me to banish Finn, to say that he can never come in our backyard again. I just figured, hey, this kid is going through a rough time in his life, and lots of kids go through rough times in their life, but he was coming to this place that was meaningful for him from his childhood. And so I felt good about that. I felt good that we were able to give him a place to hang out that was better than a lot of other places he could have been hanging out. I haven't heard from the kid in 3 or 4 years, through high school. I just got an email from this guy out of the blue, and he knows that I'm doing something in business that is relevant to his work. And he said, "I'm Finn's father." I had no idea who this guy was. And he thanked me so much. And he told me Finn is much better. He's cleaned up his act. He went through a hard time in school. He didn't get good grades, but now he's working hard. He's going to go to community college. Wow. To me, it's so gratifying to think that sometimes the nice things you do for people come around and you get rewarded years later. So I'm actually having a meeting with his dad. I had one meeting with him 2 weeks ago. I'm having another meeting. We may do some business together. And Ben is very grateful. His father's very grateful, and he's on a much better track in his life. And I'm just really happy to, that we've had such a great impact. So those are a couple of the stories, the kinds of things that I would say now that I didn't have perspective on, and also what I didn't know when I wrote the book is how independent mobility would be so important to my kids' lives when they got older. When they're just toddlers, I'm just trying to get them to learn how to ride a bike, to ride their bike to school with me. But now they're out on their own. They're going to movies with each other. They actually go to the train. They go to San Francisco on their own, and they come back. They just went to a San Francisco Giants baseball game a couple weeks ago.
The three of them together?
That one they didn't. I'm going to go with them, all of them, to a Giants game in a couple weeks. That's one of the things we do together as a group. Is we like to go to baseball games together. It's fun.
Yeah, baseball used to be there in Montreal. There was hope a few years ago that they would come back. I don't think it's gonna happen, sadly. I miss it. Yeah. We are heading toward the end of the discussion, but one last question came up to my mind. I was curious to know, again, going back to the human aspect of it, the dynamic with your wife. Sometimes were you in different positions? Like what were your positions toward risky play or certain or maybe rough play, and were you always aligned, and what did you do when you were not?
So obviously you can never be 100% aligned with your spouse, and especially when one of the spouses is crazy and different as I am. But we never had big arguments about it. I think it was just a matter of degree. And to her credit, she ended up going along with most things that I did. She thought it was interesting. She's also an entrepreneur, so she likes having different ideas. If I can think of anything we actually conflicted about, boy, I'm sorry. I can't really think of anything.
That's a good thing, though.
I know one. So our attic, our attic, I made it into a really fun place to be. And also we put ladders in each of our kids' bedrooms with a trap door so they can each go to the attic from their room. They don't have to go to the main entrance of the attic, so they can just escape. And my wife thought that was a little too much, and she still blames me for one time that my youngest son fell out of the attic and fell to the ground. She still blames me for that. Okay, this isn't exactly maybe the best way to resolve these conflicts, but she's outnumbered. There's 4 boys and her, 4 males and her, and my boys love that attic, and they love that trampoline, and they love that playhouse, and she's not, as they get older, they have more autonomy, they have more say in what they do. She's not terribly angry about it, but she's living in a male house, and you're a woman and you're very active, you're athletic. She's not very athletic. But our boys are, and they love it. And, to her credit, she's grown to accept it and embrace it. And she knows that the boys are happy and they enjoy things, and other kids come over and they enjoy being here. It's something that she's kind of grown to accept and grown to understand.
So they can still go to the attic from their rooms.
Yes. It was a conflict, but they said, no way, Mom. This is not, she tried to block the attic. She tried to block ways to get there because, like I said, Leo fell out one time, and it was dangerous that he fell out that one time. You never want something like that to happen, but the boys made it clear, no, this is important to us.
Even Leo wanted to keep going. Yeah. I get it, because as a mom, I'm more scared than I thought I would be. Even before Marco was born, I would read a lot about risky play, and I thought of all the things I would allow him to do. But then the reality hits that he does it, and I allow him to do it, but I'm scared. And sometimes I don't want to look.
You tense up.
Yeah, right? And I let Vince deal with it, because it's more important for me that he lives those experiences, because I know he's going to get more able and comfortable over time. But for example, there's a river in our yard, and there's a 6 feet drop before the river, and I can't stop my mind from seeing that he's going to fall eventually. But Vince created not a fence, but he just put logs by the side because it was kind of abrupt. And we don't hang out there. Eventually we will, so he kind of gets used to it. He's going to learn to swim as well. But I don't want to create a forbidden space. We need to go there. But yeah, I'm more afraid than I expected, but he can still do many things I want him to experience, for sure.
That's great. Yeah. And that reminds me of the way I would talk about riding bikes with my kids to school every day. Most parents would just not ride their kids with their kids riding on their own bikes and the parents riding. They wouldn't do that. So some parents would, but usually they would have the kids riding behind them or right next to them. And I just was always trying to get my kids to be more independent. And so I would just always give them a little more freedom to ride ahead. And whoa, it's tiring. It's really tiring. You're just yelling all the time. And sometimes you have to pull them aside and tell them, you can't do that anymore. And it's hard to see ahead too far, but I'll just say, as someone who's been through this, there are benefits that come later on when you're living in this zone of discomfort, but not they're pushing the limits. And every day when we would ride bikes to school, I would give them a little more freedom, a little more leeway, and eventually they get really good at it. And so I kind of think of it. It's stressful, but it's kind of an investment in your kids. Just like reading to your kids every night can be boring. You're reading the same darn book over and over again. It's an investment,
Yeah, I'm so impressed. I'm also afraid of cars much more than I thought. Cars in the street. That he gets hit by a car, and we live far from the road here where we live. But when we approach the road, we explain to him that we need to stop and look out for the cars. And at 2 years old, I was surprised. He would stop me and say, "Cars." He would teach me to stop, and I thought, wow, they learn so fast. So we need to be confident that the actions we do are going to have positive impacts on them.
Well, you don't want to give him so much freedom that he can run out into the road and get hit by a car. You don't want that.
Exactly.
But, see, you have to find that zone. You have to find the zone where he's learning, so you're uncomfortable, but not so far that he's in real danger. And that's stressful. Yeah,
it's a good learning for the parents, for sure. I was wondering, I didn't check. Is your book in French?
Oh, I had a woman from France ask me if she wanted to do translation. And initially I was thrilled. But then I forget, there were things that were going to have to be, that I was going to have to pay for. And I just didn't want to incur that expense.
Some people told us they have a hard time listening to English or reading English. So we decided we would be that bridge, because so many things are not yet translated, because we are still a small market. I was just curious, because if it was in French, I would encourage people to buy it in French. But then now I'm going to encourage them to buy it in English. So it's still printed in English. People can still get new copies.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to end eventually, or it's the editor as long as it's selling?
In math, they have the word asymptote. So it's asymptotically approaching zero, but I think it's got some life to it. Okay. There's always the possibility that something could come up. Jonathan Haidt wrote a book, I forget what it's called, but it's about kids and free play, and it's a new book out. And so I've gotten a little bit of people asking me about that. Eventually there won't be any sales, but it seems to have a lot of life to it. And our yard has a lot of life too.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my copy. Maybe the price is going to increase. I'm going to keep value. Yeah, exactly. The value is going to increase. Thank you so much again. I didn't know when I reached out if you were still active talking about the book. I mentioned, and you changed our life, and we want to say to people, invest more in the outside than in the inside of your home. In the culture we are in, it's hard to grasp, but I hope that we can kind of pursue the mission you had in. And
I would also say thank you, and I would also say it's not as easy as just saying, okay, no more screens, kids, go outside.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. Unfortunately, because our culture is so powerful, it requires some upfront investment from parents in the neighborhood. It's fun. It's fun to get to know neighbors. It's fun to be out there, but it's an investment that I think can pay off in the future.
Yeah. One thing we're gonna have a meeting actually in the village. I thought things are not happening organically. Some of the things I envisioned for the kids. So we will sit down, all the families, and we're going to have a talk about our needs and try to co-design initiatives for free outdoor play for the kids. So
wow, let me know how it goes. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a follow-up on the adventure playgrounds. We did events, but we want to bring free play in daily lives. And one thing we see is that people don't have the same, they have the same needs, but they don't have the same, it doesn't mean the same for everyone. Someone that goes at school can play in the evening or on the weekends, but homeschooling parents, they can play during daytime. So we need to, make the puzzle pieces fit together somehow. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please. Good luck.
Thanks again. So
I'd love to see the podcast when you put it out. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, of course. There will be the French version, but I guess you don't. I promise I won't say. I will be accurate with what we said today. So your website is still active, and your Facebook page, the content is still there. So I can send people there also if they want to learn more.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Well, MC, this is wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. I love the fact that we made a difference. I made a difference in your life, and love to hear more. Love to see how things go.
Thanks.
Merci d'avoir été avec nous cette semaine au Studio Vivace, et merci à tous les membres du clan Vivace. Grâce à votre soutien, on peut offrir du contenu gratuit comme ça chaque semaine. Ça soutient la quête de Vivace et ça permet de faire rayonner, de pousser les idées encore plus loin. Les membres du clan Vivace ont aussi accès à du contenu exclusif. Chaque mois, on se rencontre pour un ralliement en direct et on échange sur des thèmes qui ont toujours rapport à comment se créer un mode de vie plus vivace. Le clan finance aussi le projet sur lequel on travaille en ce moment. On veut créer une application privée, un espace d'échange pour parler de pratiques alternatives, jugées alternatives, en dehors des médias sociaux conventionnels. Si ça te parle, va à vivace.maison/joindre le clan et abonne-toi. C'est 7 $ par mois, ça donne accès à plein d'autres bonus. Bref, on se voit dans le clan.